sure that your heating and cooling needs are taken care of. I want to be seasonal with you. So if you are looking for that, you churches, you businesses, if you're looking to have that thing taken care of, have that furnace taken care of, we have a plethora. Also, want to give shout out to a wonderful message that our pastor, the Bishop Roger Hennings, preached on yesterday. It was tremendous. Thinking and thankful, a message of thanksgiving. And you know what it is, true saints? Oftentimes, and we should, we consider the people that's outside the churches. Praise God, our church gave over 252 baskets, turkey baskets, a word with a bird, and we thank God for that. But the pastor on yesterday reminded us that there's people right in our churches, our brothers and our sisters, that sometimes we look past and we don't minister to the need. Did you not know that this was one of the great secrets that made the church in the book of Acts, chapter 2, grow? Because they had all things in common, and the fellowship and the breaking of the bread. And the Bible said that God added to the church as such to be saved. And then over there in James 2, it says, anybody being blessed with these world's good, and see their brothers and sisters in need, and shut their bowels of compassion, how dwelleth the love of God in you? So we want to encourage you. This week I'll probably be talking about Thanksgiving all week, but we want you to be mindful. This is a terrible time for a lot of people who don't have families, who don't have friends. So we want to encourage you. Amen. Look past your brother. Thank God for the baskets that we're giving out. Thank God for those that are going to be working in the city mission. But we also want to make sure that we take care of those that are in the household of faith. And you that have a need in the church, don't let pride stop you from somebody reaching out to be a blessing to you. Amen. If you have a need, let somebody in the body of Christ know you got a need, because that's what we're there for, to lift each other up. So what a tremendous word of God that was preached onto us, and I am so thankful, saints of God. When I think about what the Lord has done through my life and my wife's life and through the shepherd's guide and through the people that I meet, I'm just so thankful that God has blessed me to be a blessing. So we want to encourage you on this week, amen, as you enjoy your family, as you enjoy your friends, be thankful. Remember, there's somebody that don't have it like you. And amen, even in the church, as we're walking past people to shake the pastor's hand and the pastor's wife's hand, let us make sure that we minister to our brothers and sisters in the faith. Love you guys. Have a tremendous Thanksgiving. I'll come back tomorrow and tell you more reasons why I'm thankful. God bless you.
Family you can turn to. We're the book that brings you home. So turn to the pages of the Shepherd's Guide for the service you're looking for. Pick it up, the Shepherd's Guide. Look us up in the Shepherd's Guide. Call us up, see why we say it's the Christian's choice of yellow pages.
To advertise or receive your free copy, call 716-688-3882.
Serving Lockport and Dunkirk. We're Power 96.5 FM, 1080 AM, WUFO, Amherst, Buffalo.
For the next hour, you will be listening to Living Now with L. Nathan Hare. The phone lines are now open at 837-1112, and we encourage your questions and comments. Now, without further ado, here's your host, L. Nathan Hare.
All right, here we go. Living now, living right now. This is L. Nathan here, your host here for this next hour at WFO, Power 96.5 FM on your dial. Our principal sponsor, of course, is the Community Action Organization of Western New York, still fighting the war on poverty, now in our 53rd year. I want to welcome all of you together this hour of insight, introspection, and interpretation of facts, events, and trends affecting you right here and right now in Buffalo and the Western New York community, and in fact, connect you to communities all across the country. Each week, we focus on things we think will be of interest to you, which will serve to motivate you and serve to connect you to the broader issues that affect our communities here in Western New York. Now, today's program is live, so you can call in, you can join our discussion. I hope that you will. Our number here again is 837-1112. That's 837-1112. This is Thanksgiving week, and I'd like to use this hour to talk about cultural heritage, the only context in which I think all of us can truly celebrate this holiday in essentially the same way. Obviously, we can't all share a sense of of joy about Native Americans being dispossessed of their lands and their monuments and their lives, or the vicious enslavement of African people, but we can all share in the celebration of our various cultural heritages handed down to us by our ancestors. Culture originally refers to an anthropological term, underlying values, beliefs, and a code of practice that makes a community what it is. The customs of a society, the image of its members, the things that make it different from other societies are its culture. A culture is not an absolute term. Nothing is just your culture, and does not appear in other cultures. Culture is really the collective behavior of people that are a part of society. Culture includes deeply held values, beliefs, and assumptions, symbols, heroes, and rituals. Culture is powerfully subjective and reflects the meanings and understandings that are typical or typically attributed to situations and the solutions that can be applied to common problems. That's what culture does. As a human being, we have to live together in a society, and a society is organized by various rules, which are known as that society's culture. The development of culture has a major importance in modern civilization. Different societies have different cultural forces, but their purposes are to civilize people to interact with others. Culture then shapes the people's behavior and the way that they think and perform. Sometimes culture also possesses some restrictions over various things. People learn various things from their society's culture. One cultural thing may be prohibited by another culture depending upon religious beliefs and values. Culture acts as a software of the mind. Peoples sometimes do something and sometimes keep far away from something which is not allowed in their culture. So I'm taking this from an article that was written in July of 2013. You actually could pull this from the studymode.com website. That's studied, STUDYMODE.com. That website. The article is entitled, "Culture is the Software of the Mind." A computer can't operate without some instruction. These instructions are known as computer software. Software instructs the activities and function of the computer to get a specific output from specific inputs. Like computers, a person can be instructed through his or her culture. Cultural forces put into the human mind as software which instructs people to do or not do a certain thing or a certain set of things. Culture teaches our behavior, what we eat, how we dress, what we teach ourselves in our educational system. It teaches us what our social structure is, which are the strength of the modern of our current modern life. Our personality as a people is also influenced by various cultural inputs. Culture provides like a basic script or an outline of how you visualize yourself, how you see yourself in the context of the groups of people that you are innately a part of. An African person living in Italy will still grow up seeing herself or himself as an African person. Kobe Bryant, for example, grew up in Italy, where his father toured as a European professional basketball player. Although Bryant speaks fluent Italian, he does not see himself as an Italian. He sees himself as an African. Well, I'm taking liberty with that. He may see himself as black or colored or a homeboy or a blood or a dog. But in general, he sees himself not as an Italian. He sees himself the same way that African Americans perceive themselves, as a part of the African American group. So the culture of a group of innately linked people forms a glue. I forgot, I didn't tell you that I'm here with Emmanuel Radford, who is doing the live streaming of the program. If you want to see us actually talking on the air, you can type into your search engine. If you got a handheld device or your a desktop computer, you can type in your search engine Facebook and then type in Living Now. The program will come up. You'll hear us and see us talking on the air. If you have any questions or observations or concerns that you want to express, you can type them in. Emmanuel will get those to me, and we'll try to respond to as many of these things as we can on the air as we go through the course of the program. So the culture of a group innately linked forms a glue that provides a group strength, a sense of feeling that you are more as a part of something than you are apart from everything. Just think about that for a second. That if you are a part of a group, you feel yourself to be more, to be stronger, to have more presence and sense of control and sense of being a vital part of the world that you're in if you're a part of a group, as opposed to being apart, being separate from everything. So I know that there are the people that we talked about last week when we were talking about the elections, the people that are real cool, the heavy people, the deep thinking people that think that they don't have to be a part of, the whole, they can just be by themselves because they're just all that. Well, those just all that people tend to be less than that, when life works out. They tend to be virtually invisible in terms of their part, in the vitality of the world that we live in, because they're just selfish. They're just thinking about themselves. They only think in the context of themselves and not in the context of their group. It's important for you to think about yourself in the context of some group that you are a part of, because that's where your strength lies. Your strength does not lie in your individualness. Your strength lies in your unity. So we'll talk about that as we go forward. In the absence of, or your culture helps you define how you fit into the world. It helps you see yourself as a part of the value that has formed the world as we know it. In the absence of culture, nothing defines you. Nothing says that you are distinctly this and not that. If you are a part of something that is greater than you, that birthed you, you have a set of expectations about yourself that are taught and reinforced by the culture that birthed you. However, if you are reared in a culture that is different from yours, if you start and engage in life with a disadvantage. Let me see if I can make this make sense. Culture defines a people as themselves and not someone else. It provides them with a blueprint that tells them how to be a part of their individual culture. If you are not a part of the culture that is being taught to you, you are by definition being taught how to be someone other than yourself. Just let that work with you for a second. Most of us already know that it is difficult, if not impossible, to be something different than yourself. If you're an apple and something's trying to teach you how to be an orange, you may even get a little orangey kind of color, on your skin. But no matter what you do, you're still going to be an apple, right? And so you're going to end up having a very difficult and distorted life if you try to raise yourself to be something that is not innately you. Right? Now, you can be an orange that lives in California or an orange that lives in Florida, and you might have a different look, a different texture, a different kind of orange color, and so on. But you're still going to be an orange. You're still going to be healthy. But if somebody takes you out of that context and tries to raise you as a piece of wood or tries to raise you as a fish, you're going to have a tough time, right? If you survive at all, you're going to be kind of crazy, right? But well, let's just look at what's happening to us, right? We allow ourselves to be taught by people who are not ourselves, who are teaching us not to be us, who are teaching us to be them. And then we wonder why we have psychosis, why we have craziness, why we have young people that are already showing signs of mental health when they're 4, 5, 6, 7 years old. It's because of the distortion that is inside of our heads, because our innate nature says that we are one thing, but somebody is teaching us and conditioning us to receive our instruction of how we should live our lives and how we should think about ourselves as if we were somebody else. It is really hard, if not impossible, for you to be yourself and be somebody else inside your own head. That's a tough dance. So African Americans, more than any other people anywhere in the world, suffer this disadvantage. We are being taught a culture that is designed to reproduce European Caucasian cultural styles, values, frames of reference, worldviews, religions, languages, and a historical framework of thought that are designed to raise people up to become adult European Caucasian people. That's what the system is designed to do. So when the powers that of this country, say that that we shall all be Americans, we should all be Americans, what they really mean is that we should all be Euro-Caucasian Americans. Anything else is called different. Anything else is called diversity. So if you attempt to be something other than a European Caucasian American person, you are somehow oppositional to the norm. So you are something that has to either be tolerated. Listen to the words they use. Something that has to be tolerated, or something that has to be confronted. If you are in the presence of something that is you, that is innately you, you wouldn't have to tolerate it. You would expect it. It would be what you would perceive as normal around you. It would be what you would want to be around. If it's something that you have to tolerate, I just want you to ask yourself, right? If you live with someone, your wife or your spouse, your husband, your significant other, I think that's the right word now, right? Your significant other, right? You live with this person. You've been living with them for 6, 7, 8 years, right? And one day the person comes home, you're sitting on the couch, and they walk over to you and say, honey, I've been thinking on this for a little while, and I think I got my mind wrapped around this, I think I can tolerate you. How much time you gonna be living with that person? Okay. That's just not gonna work, right? You're not gonna live with somebody who thinks that the way they negotiate life with you is that they tolerate you, right? If that's what it's about, why don't you go tolerate something else? You don't need to tolerate me. Go someplace else and tolerate something, right? But we live in a country where people talk to us like it's a good thing, like they're being noble, to talk to us about how they tolerate us, right? And you wonder why you have such dissonance, such noise, such sense of contradiction and sense of being in opposition to your own spirit, being taught by people who are deliberately trying to raise you up to be something that is innately different than you. If they really cared about you, then they would find ways to use the systems that they control to put you in a position where you can teach you to you. Now, there are some things that are not culture. In my mind, everybody having a right to vote is not culture. That's a right. A right is not a culture. A right is something that belongs to you. When I buy a car, it is not a culture. That's my car. Okay. Let's not get this twisted, okay? Don't let people seduce you into thinking in ways that are basically nuts, okay? You have a right to swim in a public swimming pool that's paid for with public money. You have a right to be able to go to the supermarket. You have a right to be able to get your clothes cleaned at the cleaners. Those are rights, right? You have a right to possess your own body. That's not culture. That's your right, okay? But culture is my right it's not my right. Culture is the innate need for me to be able to visualize myself in the continuum of the people that birthed me, so that I can see me in the origin of things. I can see me in the evolution of things. I can see me in the context of the kinds of ways of thinking, my religion, my values, my music, my art, my dress, my food, that unite me with other people like me and make me feel like I am a part of that whole. And in my case, as an African person, I don't get to say I want to or don't want to be a part of the whole that I'm a part of, because my Africanness comes with me everywhere I go. As soon as I take off the mask, take off the clothes, take off the spacesuit, and you can see my face, you say, oh, I don't care what country he lived in. I don't care what kind of job he has. I don't care how educated he is. I know who he is. He's an African. All these other people, they can lighten up, brighten up, they can dye their hair, they can change their clothes, they can change their religion, they can change the way that they talk, they can speak a different language, and so on, and they can become a part of sort of a general culture, the general culture of European Caucasian people. They can become that. There's nothing I can ever do that will make that happen for me. So justice requires that you allow me to be able to live in a context that reproduces me in me, since it is impossible for me to produce somebody else in me. Other people can fake it. We can't, right? So that seems to me to be the important distinction here. But the very system that we find ourselves living in imposes the cultural script onto African people, religiously reminding African people every day that we aren't Euro-Caucasian people, and that we are not shared descendants of the heritage that produced the United States of America, or shared recipients of that heritage of achievement. And I know we're going to be taking a break in just a minute, but that we're not, shared recipients of that heritage of achievement. What do I mean by that? Even though we can document with all kinds of rigor, we can document that African people have been a part of every single moment of the existence of the becoming United States, the formed United States, the developed United States. All of that, African people have been fundamental all the way. African people are actually the navigators on the boats that brought Christopher Colon and his crew, the folks they broke out of jail, that became his crew. African people were a part of the navigators who brought people to the shores of Hispaniola and eventually to the shores of Florida, and then on into the two Americas, North and South, three Americas, North and South, and Central America. African people were a part of all of that. African people were a part of the economy that created the United States. African people, in the form of enslaved African people, were the backbone or the engine of what made it possible for the Americas to have a surplus economy that enabled them to be able to produce all of the material gains this country has produced over the course of these 260 or so years since its existence. African people have been a part of all of that. Yet to this day, African people are not recognized as shared ancestors of this country or shared recipients of the heritage of this country. We're still viewed as the other. We're still viewed as the different. We're still viewed as the diversity. So my position is, why are we trying to swim upstream? Okay, I accept the fact that I'm different. I accept the fact that I'm not the same as you. My responsibility is not for me to produce you and me. My responsibility is to produce my ancestors in me. If I can turn my ancestors into me, guess what that turns me into? It turns me into the creators of the pyramids. It turns me into the creators of Pythagorean geometry. It turns me into the creators of agricultural societies of the Bantu people who conquered 70% of the continent of Africa, and so on. It turns me into the great and vital and wonderful people that I am a child of. So that is really good for me. If you seek to take a seed and to grow a tree that is straight and tall, you generally have to put a stiff and straight brace around the young tree to guide its growth, so it does not become warped and twisted, growing in every which way but straight up. You've seen trees that didn't get grown that way, right? And you're like, what is that? It doesn't even look like a tree, twisted and turned and not growing straight, at all. That's what culture that is what a culture that is designed to produce you in you would do. It would serve as a stiff pole or a brace to which you become tied through the instructions of your parents and your shared community. All the things you need to learn to be transformed into your own people lie along the straight path that is outlined for you in your culture. Okay, so your parents, your adult family members, your teachers, they are responsible for teaching you your culture so that you reproduce and build upon the inheritance your foreparents placed in you, and so that you can take that cultural inheritance that you have built upon and pass it on to those who follow you. We got a couple of callers hanging on. Let me grab let me call real quick. Hi, caller, are you there?
Yes, good morning, Mr. Hare.
Hi, Mother Dora, how you doing?
Oh, I'm doing pretty good this morning. I'm still working on that dissertation.
They take a while. Just be patient.
I wish I could wave a magic wand.
I know you do.
So that it is done, but I'm getting there.
All right.
But I wanted to make a couple comments on your topic this morning. But first, I want to announce that this coming Saturday, the Saturday after Thanksgiving, which is the 24th, I'm doing a tribute to Orly Delgado.
Oh, yeah, my friend, yep.
Yes, I'm sure you knew her well.
Yep.
She made her transition not long ago.
Yep.
For those who don't know, she was one of the former executive director of the Langston Hughes Institute.
Yep. I wrote her first contract with the city,
with
Model City.
On 25 High Street, and she was director for close to 30 years.
Mm-hmm.
So I did go to her homegoing service, but I wanted to do a community-wide tribute to her.
Mm-hmm.
And so it will be this coming Saturday, the 24th, at the Meriwether Library, beginning at 2 o'clock. It will be from 2 to 5 p.m.
Okay.
Speaking of culture, the Langston Hughes Institute was the center of arts, our culture, our history, and many poets, writers, artists, and people that today who are still doing their craft, they got their start there.
Yep.
At the Langston Hughes Institute, and she did a lot of work with our young people. So I hope people will come out. I will have speakers on the program. And Mr. Hare, if you have some time and could stop by, I would love to have you come and say a few words. I'm just getting this together, so
sure,
this
put me down.
Last-minute notice.
I'll definitely do that. Absolutely.
But if you could come by Saturday, and you don't have to stay the whole time, but if you want to just come and say something about her, what you knew about her, what you knew about the Langston Hughes Institute, I would greatly appreciate it.
Absolutely.
That's 2 o'clock Saturday from 2 to 5.
Yep.
But I also wanted to say that this past Saturday, I wasn't able to be on my show because I had some things to take care of. But I left a tape by Dr. Joy Leary. I think you know of her work.
Mm-hmm.
She wrote The Traumatic Slave, and if I get it wrong, you can help me with it. It's the Post-Traumatic Slave
right.
Syndrome.
Right.
I think that was it.
Right.
Something along
Something to build off of PTSD, right.
Yes, and I have her tape now. It was a 2-hour lecture, so my show is only 30 minutes. So I just had the first 30 minutes played on the show, and I got a lot of response from people because she talked about the trauma that African people came through during that enslavement period. And she spoke about the fact that we are still suffering today.
Mm-hmm.
And she talked about the mental impact, the denial, as we have gone through the years, of some people denying to be black. And, you know, she gave examples of people passing for black. And she gave several specific symptoms of that trauma that our people went through. So I was just wondering if you could maybe say a couple words about that, because I don't have enough time. But I think it kind of fits some of the things you're talking about this morning.
Absolutely.
But so I'll hang up and listen, and I look forward to maybe having you come by Saturday and speaking a little bit about Orly Delgado. And I'm inviting the community to come out. It's free and open to the public.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Hare.
Thank you, Mother Doyle. All right. Thank you, guys. Listen, why don't we take our first break, and then I'll get back to what Mother Doyle was talking about. So if y'all stick with us, we will see you on the side of the break here at Living Now, Living Right Now.
Do you want to increase your home's value? Do you want to lower your energy bills? Are you in need of affordable financing for your next home improvement project? The CAO Home Improvement Resource Program can help. Just come to their monthly HIRP orientation session every second Wednesday of the month at 564 Dodge Street, Building 400. HIRP staff will help identify the resources you need to get financed, and they'll even help you with completing your application. You won't know what you qualify for until you call them today at 881-6543. That's 881-6543. Learn about all the home improvement programs you may be eligible for and ask about the affordable financing program that can help turn your house into your dream home. Call 881-6543 for more info. It's the Home Improvement Resource Program, restoring value to neighborhoods across Erie County, one house at a time. Brought to you by the Community Action Organization of Erie County.
All right. Welcome back to Living Now here at WFO. Power 96.5 FM on your dial. I'm here with Emmanuel Radford, who's doing the live streaming of the program. If you have any comments, questions, or thoughts, you can type them in on your search engine, on your handheld device or your computer, typing in Facebook and then Living Now, and you can participate with the program. A listener asked the question of why we are perceived, African people are perceived as the enemy, I think was the term that they used, when African people have been the recipients, I think is what the caller used, of so much, I guess, the benefits, welfare, Medicaid, so much pain. Oh, so much pain. I'm sorry, I got it now. When we have been the recipients of so much pain. I appreciate that. That helps me understand that comment a little bit better. And the reality, I think, is important for the caller to understand, and that all of us have to understand, if the pain is being experienced by somebody other than you, you're not the one feeling the pain. So the people who have initiated and have benefited from the enslavement of African people, the dispossession of Native American people from their lands, of their lives, the tremendous horrors that so many non-European Caucasian people have endured in being exploited by the European Caucasian peoples of this world. The pain that people have endured has not been shared pain. It has been pain that has been experienced by those non-European Caucasian people. And so when people talk about, why we can't all act like Americans, well, we didn't all act like Americans when this pain was put on us, right? When we lost our lands, we weren't all Americans then. When we were being exploited, we were not all Americans then, and so on. And so that's a part of what Mother Doyle is talking about in terms of this post-traumatic stress syndrome. There was an article, I don't remember if it was in yesterday's paper, the day before, that talked about the trauma. No, it may have been when I was doing the research on this program. It was an article I came across on the internet that talked about the trauma that is experienced. And that's what what's her name? Joy Leary. That's what her book focuses on. It's the trauma that African people have experienced as a consequence of not just the enslavement of African people, but don't forget, for 90 years following the legal enslavement of African people, we lived in legal apartheid, right? Colored only signs, for faucets and bathrooms and hotels and swimming pools, et cetera, et cetera. And it wasn't just that when you went to get services from your government, right? If you were black, you got one set of access, if at all, to those services. If you were Caucasian European, you got a different set, a much higher set of access to those goods and services from your government. And so when you experience this, when you experience people saying that you have to look down at the sidewalk, when I'm walking down the street, you don't get to look straight ahead. You don't get to look at me. If you're across the street and you look at me and you're a woman and I'm a black man, I can be charged with rape. That used to be the law in this country until 1966 in Mississippi. Yes, that used to be the law, that if you were across the street and you were an African man and you looked at a white woman on the other side of the street, just looking at her, you ain't got to smile, you don't have to do a Emmett Till whistle, or nothing like that. Just looking at her, that was considered statutory rape. You can end up in a chain gang, for that. That experience is not wiped away just because in 1965, 66, 67, 68, you passed the civil rights legislation and said that those things were wrong, because the psychology of the people that did these things didn't disappear, and the people who had to enforce those new regulations, they also had that same psychology, so they didn't enforce the new civil rights regulations. So you continued even to this day to experience some of the same things. That's why you got stop and frisk, putting 60 or 70% of people in jail for marijuana possession, when only 14 to 15% of African people smoke marijuana, 14 to 15% of Caucasian people smoke marijuana, and there's a lot more Caucasian people. Why don't we see, 2/3 or 75% of the people in jail for marijuana possession being Caucasian people? Why would that even exist? Because the people that enforce the law are the same people who have the same biases, who have the same psychological attitudes towards African people. And African people have to live with that. See, that's the part that people don't understand. And so when you have to live with that kind of trauma, that kind of psychological oppression, that physical oppression that is expressed out of people's psychological attitudes towards African people, it produces behaviors in you, because you don't have a cultural context that allows you to be able to teach you how to be you. So you walk around this country trying to be somebody else, and the somebody else you're trying to be is doing everything in their power to abuse you or to disabuse you of your ability to be them. They say that you should be a part of the American culture, but then they deny you. The same people that say you should be a part of American culture are the ones who deny you the ability to be a part of that culture. So it's important that African people preserve the knowledge of how to cook black-eyed peas and okra and kidney beans and lima beans and rice, and made them staple crops that fed the Caucasian enslavers as much as it fed the enslaved Africans. What is culturally more important, however, than our creation of cornbread and gumbo and fufu and millet bread is the discipline, the patience, the planning, the conservation skills, the division of labor, teamwork, self-belief, and belief in our Creator that form the substance of the culture whose roots are found in West Africa, in Kenya, in Zimbabwe, in Ethiopia, in Egypt, in Angola, in Congo, in Chad, in Cameroon, in the Ivory Coast. Those African survivors passed on the core elements of our values, beliefs, and assumptions, our rituals, our symbols, even our heroes like Brer Rabbit and John Henry, the steel-driving railroad man. I know a lot of people always get surprised when I say that, because when you see the John Henry steel-driving railroad man, it's always a Caucasian man. That's not true. That was an African man. All of the original images were all of an African man who was roughly around 200 pounds and had tremendous energy. And he was a steel driving maniac, that was just, putting those railroad ties in. A lot of us don't even remember that we live on the southern end of what used to be called the Southern Erie Railroad line that went from Toronto to right next to Broderick Park, that bridge over there to the right of Broderick Park. That bridge was the end. You see it on the bridge. It's the Southern Erie Railroad line. it wasn't a railroad line in the Americas, from the south to Erie County. It was from Toronto to the southern border, northern border of Erie County, and so on, right? But that railroad line was built largely by enslaved Africans who escaped from the South, and that was the work that they did, and that's how they paid for themselves. In fact, the first 5 families, one of the first, I would say 5 of the first 20 families that founded Toronto were African people. So, yeah, that's another set of stories altogether, right? But that's what I mean by having a sense of your own history and your own cultural heritage. The South African ethnic group called the Bavenda people tell their version of this important story. Follow this story real quickly. There was 3 beautiful waterbuck who were great friends. They lived together in the woods, eating together, sleeping together, working together. Unknown to the waterbuck, Lion watched them constantly. What a nice, tasty meal Waterbuck would make were his greedy thoughts. But 3 waterbuck together were more than the Lion felt that he could handle. One day the friends quarreled, and then they separated. Each went his own way, and Lion chuckled to himself. He followed the first waterbuck and killed him and ate him. Then he followed the second waterbuck, killed him and ate him. Then he followed the third waterbuck, killed him and ate him too. There is strength in unity. Culture enables unity. Culture unites us. It is in being united that we have our best strength. That's what that story was designed to teach us. The Tuareg people of the Timbuktu region of West Africa, they tell their version of another story that teaches lessons that you might share around your table on this coming Thanksgiving Day. Years ago, there was a young Tuareg man who felt he could get absolutely no recognition from his fellows. He went to a blacksmith and promised him a goodly gift if he could just make him a beautiful and powerful sword and a strong lance, so that the young man might kill many men and gain the respect that he so desired. When he had left, the blacksmith went into the bush and cut down an acacia tree. From its trunk, he carved a great wooden platter of the type used to bear the food in a feast. He employed great care and craftsmanship in bringing out the wood's natural beauty. When the Tuareg returned and asked for his sword and lance, the blacksmith gave him the platter. "What is this?" cried the angry man. "I asked for a good sword and a lance." The blacksmith explained that to gain the respect the man desired, it would be much better to take the platter and fill it with food for his friends and relatives. If he did this, everyone would admire and respect him. So the young man thought long about the platter while considering whether other blacksmiths in the village he could hire for the service he requested. He had wanted a carver. He did not want. He said if he had wanted a carver, he would not have gone to a blacksmith. After a long deliberation, the Tuareg man decided his course of action. He would carry out the blacksmith's instructions. The first feast to fill his great wooden platter was gathered from his very own farm and cupboards. He became widely known. Word of his fine feast even reached the highest chambers of Timbuktu, prompting visits by great cavalries of men and women seeking the honor of his fine company. In later years, the man became chief in his Tuareg village in West Africa. And each year after becoming a chief, the great and wise man sent the blacksmith a cow, the goodly gift he had promised if he gained renown. In this story, the young Tuareg man felt that if he had two great weapons, he could prove himself worthy by killing many other Tuareg people. His untutored worldview led him to reason in error. The blacksmith the Tuareg young man went to was more than a blacksmith. He was an adult male of his community. He had learned the ways of his culture. He knew that what a Tuareg man had to do in order to gain respect among the cultural group of which he was a part. Rather than challenge the young man's reasoning and risking an argument or division between them, he spent his energy making the young man a form of weapon he did not expect. He made the young man a beautiful platter made from the strongest wood that could bear any weight and delivered that to the young man. The young man hadn't paid anything for the platter, and the blacksmith did not ask for any pay. He merely gave the young man the wisdom of the values and ways and worldview of the Tuareg people. He told the young man that it would be much better to take the platter and fill it with food for his friends and relatives. If he did this, everyone would admire and respect him. Rather than become loud and contentious, the young man considered the wisdom words spoken to him by the blacksmith who made him the platter. He then decided to accept the teaching of his elder. He started with his own food from his own cupboards and gave feasts throughout the region. He became widely known and highly respected among the people, and he achieved his original goal. The young man remembered his promise that he would give a cow to the blacksmith in return for the weapons he desired. The young man became the chief of his village, and every year he delivered to the blacksmith another cow. If our children were taught our culture, they would know that the man who becomes a contributor to the sustenance of his community will be much more widely respected than a man feared for his willingness to kill members of his own community. They would know that an adult man in their community whom they see in one role might be capable of something entirely else. They would see that there is thanksgiving in the giving, even as in the receiving. Let's take our last break, and then we'll finish up our subject today. So if you all stick with us, we will see you on the side of the break here at Think Again. Think Again.
Do you want to increase your home's value? Do you want to lower your energy bills? Are you in need of affordable financing for your next home improvement project? The CAO Home Improvement Resource Program can help. Just come to their monthly HIRP orientation session every second Wednesday of the month at 564 Dodge Street, Building 400. HIRP staff will help identify the resources you need to get financed, and they'll even help you with completing your application. You won't know what you qualify for until you call them today at 881-6543. That's 881-6543. Learn about all the home improvement programs you may be eligible for and ask about the affordable financing program that can help turn your house into your dream home. Call 881-6543 for more info. It's the Home Improvement Resource Program, restoring value to neighborhoods across Erie County, one house at a time. Brought to you by the Community Action Organization of Erie County.
All right, welcome back to Living Now here at WFO Power 96.5 FM on your dial. I'm here with Emmanuel Radford, who's doing the live streaming of the program. We got about 10 minutes. And so what I'd like for you to do, if you have any questions or comments or concerns about what we talked about, just type into your search engine Facebook and then type in Living Now. The program will come up. You can type in your questions, concerns, or your thoughts, and we'll respond to them on the air. So hopefully that story made a little bit of sense to you, because it reminded me so much when I read this story of what goes on amongst us as a community of people. Especially with our young men. They run around with their shirts inside out. They got these caps, twisted, to one side of their head. They got, teardrops tattooed, on their faces, like they feel sorry for killing somebody. I don't even get what that's all about. They wear their pants, the way people in jail wear their pants, down below their hips and whatnot. They write all over themselves. And they think that, if they get their hands on a gun and drive by or sneak by, and shoot some people, and run away, this somehow makes them feared people. And therefore, because they're feared as somebody who might kill them, that somehow confers upon them respect. Fear does not confer respect. Fear just confers fear. Fear warns people that you are somebody who can't be trusted. Fear is something that muscles people up or girds people up to protect themselves from you, not to love you, not to respect you, not to be a part of you. You break the unity of the community through fear. You do not create the unity of the community through fear. Whoever is telling you that, I just hate to break it to you, but they are lying through their teeth, okay? And we've just got to stop listening to that, right? And we've got to find ways to teach us to each other. That behavior didn't come from us. Just like, when I was young, Emmanuel, this would have been like 800 years before you were born. When I was young, the adults in our communities would always say, well, there's no poppy farms, in the African community. There's no gun manufacturing, places in African communities. We're not responsible for the drugs. We're not responsible for the guns. That's true. You're absolutely right. And there's still no poppy farms in our community. There's still no gun manufacturing plants in our communities. But there are people who are witless enough to buy the guns. There are people who are witless enough to buy the poppy seeds and the product of the poppy seeds, to buy the opiates and all of that sort of stuff. There are people who are witless enough to pull themselves together into groups to produce and sell poison in our communities and to use guns to create markets that they control to sell those drugs in our communities. This is not our culture. This is misconduct. I hate to break it to you, right? Carrying a gun, carrying a knife is not culture. It is misconduct. Let me grab this first call real quick. Hi, caller. Are you there?
Yes, Mr. Hare.
Hello. How you doing?
I hear some music.
Yeah, I heard that too.
Okay, but you know what? I forgot to tell you. I wish you a happy Thanksgiving.
Yes, thank you.
I said, let me call back, and I hope you have a great day. My son cooks every Thanksgiving.
Oh, that's great.
My youngest son, he's a tremendous cook. So I'm looking forward to going to his house, and that gives me a break. But anyway, you just have a wonderful Thanksgiving to you and your family. So that's what I just wanted to say.
Thank you, Mother Joel. I really appreciate you.
Okay.
You do the very same. I hope we all have a very great and safe week. So as people, I think that we should use this Thanksgiving Day to remember and cherish the foundations out of which we sprang, our cultures and our historical memories. Our culture is basically, as I indicated at the beginning of the program, it is the software of the mind. It is the basic framework of our perceptions, how we interpret what we see, hear, and experience in the world. It is the system of values by which we decide worth or the legitimacy of things. It is our system of beliefs. Even though we have different personalities, we still share within a culture a similar set of beliefs about who we are, how we relate to the origins of being, what marks us as members of our group, and what is expected of us as members of our group. It is so important that we have this context inside of us so that we can reproduce us in us. I just think, I know that there are some people going to disagree with this, but I think it is extremely dangerous for you to allow other people to produce them inside of you. There's a word for that, right? It's called a parasite. Just work with me for a second. See, a symbiotic, relationship is one where I grow me in somebody else, and in doing that, I help the somebody else grow themselves. So it's symbiotic. My relationship between something else involves me drawing something from them that enables me to be me, but it also enables me to give something to somebody else that enables them to be them. That's a symbiotic relationship. We both benefit from that relationship. We both grow into ourselves as a result of that relationship. But a relationship in which you suck something out of me and you walk away with the something and I walk away as a husk of myself, like a shell, a peanut without any peanuts in it. It's just a shell. You wind up with just a shell. That's not a positive relationship. That's a negative relationship. That's a parasitic relationship. And that is what we have endured, particularly as African people. And we continue to almost volunteer to remain in this parasitic kind of a relationship where it's a one-way kind of a deal, where there's stuff that comes out of us that goes to others, but what comes back is not something that produces us inside of us. It is something that produces somebody else inside of us. It can never be good, in my mind, for you to turn yourself into something other than yourself. We have a call. Oh, we have 3 minutes? 3 minutes? That's all? Okay. Oh, 5 minutes. 5 minutes. He got more fingers than that. He got 5 minutes. So reality informs everything. including perceptions of reality. It is relative and contextual. The reality we experience informs our perceptions about reality. We experience that reality through the lens of our group culture. People act or react on the basis of the way in which they perceive the external world. So in returning to our discussion about education, particularly public school education, we must ask ourselves how the same public school system can teach so many different cultural contexts to so many different races and ethnicities. And I would suggest to you that whatever we have right now doesn't do that. What we have right now is an educational system that pretends that it is culturally neutral, that it doesn't really teach anybody's culture. That is a bold-faced lie. Okay, that is just not true. It teaches a synthesis of European Caucasian culture that is referred to as American culture. But that synthesis of culture does not do justice to the African people that are a part of this culture. It doesn't do justice to the Native American people who live within the society of the United States. It doesn't do justice to think about the fact that if the people that we call Hispanic people, 80% of the genetic pool of Hispanic people is Native American. Native American, yeah. We always think it's black, but it's not. The genetic pool of Native Americans, there's one pool that is sort of the Mongolian, type, from the northern part of above China. They migrated over the Bering Strait when there was land rather than water there. And then there was the Slavic groups, that also came from like the Ural Mountains, type area. They migrated into the glacial ridge as it was, melting and opening up new land. And they wound up fighting with the Chinese. So there was a group of Slavic type people. Those two groups became the seed groups that became the Native Americans that we see today. That's why when you look at Inuit people, they look much more like Mongolian people than they do anybody else. The people that we see in the Mayan populations in Mexico and so on, they look more like Mongolian people. But you also see the people on the steppes of the United States, they look more like Slavic people and so on. So those are the two groups. The difference is that they were conquered. The people that we call Hispanic people were conquered largely by Hispanic or by Spanish and Portuguese people. So they wound up speaking Spanish. So we put them in even a more difficult position because they think that their ethnicity is Iberian Spanish, which it can't possibly be. Even as our cultural identity can't be English, can't be English. That's just crazy, right? So that's why it's important for us to have a mechanism by which we can teach ourselves to ourselves. We can't expect the generic system, public school system, to teach the very specifics of the cultures of the various peoples of the United States through the generic system. But the Hawaiians had a different process. In Hawaii, which, remember, they're Americans, they're Native Americans, but they're Americans, right? They went to their public school system back in, this would have been in the late 1970s, and they had a constitutional amendment passed of their state constitution that required the public school system to teach Hawaiian history, to teach Hawaiian culture. And so Hawaiians now have the use of public resources to teach Hawaiian culture to Hawaiian people, which has allowed them to recreate themselves in their own, exactly. They've been able to recreate themselves in their own minds, in their own group experience. And that has done tremendous wonders in undoing some of the psychological trauma that Hawaiian people experience as a result of being conquered by Americans and so on. And that same kind of outcome would happen to us if that could be made to occur. So I got the sign that says it's time to go. So I'm going to have to let us go right there, but we'll talk about this stuff more as we go forward. Thank you out there for listening to us and supporting us. We look forward to talking to you all next week here at Living Now.